The Tennis Gambling Podcast on the Sports Game Podcast Network is brought to you by Nick Fantasy. Sign on the promo code SGPN, score up to $1,000 bonus cash. We're also brought to you by Rhythm. Get your 7-day free trial today by going to sportsgames.com/RATHMM. And welcome, everybody, to the Tennis Gambling Podcast here on the Sports Game Podcast Network. It is currently Saturday afternoon, roughly 5 p.m. Eastern Time on September 28th. I'm your host, always, Scott Reichel, once again going solo for this pod. Should be a fun episode because it is time to get into the quarterfinals in Tokyo. We have 4 matches to preview. We're going to get into those in a little while. Do want to recap, though, what happened in the last episode first. Before we do that, though, do want to give a brief, I'd say, update for the schedule for the week. So, as you know, there's a tournament going on in Beijing as well. There are a couple of matches taking place tonight or early in the morning. However, those are actually round of 16 matches. Those are not quarterfinal matches. So, Tokyo got a day head start over Beijing. So, they are definitely a day ahead based on the actual schedule for these events. So, back once again for the quarterfinal episode of Beijing on Sunday, and the Tokyo episode for the semifinals. So keep that in mind. 2 episodes coming out tomorrow, so stay tuned for that. However, do want to remind you once again to like, subscribe on YouTube, and a reminder to rate the podcast on Spotify or Apple. So if you consume the podcast audio only or through video component too on the live streams or on the YouTube video, point is you can still show support. So like, subscribe on YouTube, and rate or review the podcast on Spotify or Apple. Plus, a reminder, check out the SGPN merch store. A lot of great Tennis Game Podcast merch there. We have t-shirts, sweatshirts, and mugs. All high quality, all affordable. So recommend getting yourself something. Definitely a lot of different options to choose from. And that's not just for this show. Also with other shows with the network. But a reminder, there's a brand new show with the network because you have the Get to the Points pod, which is hosted by Doug Stanhope, Brandon Walsh, and Sean Green, as they host the newest podcast every Thursday before the game. Doug, Brandon, and Sean will give out their favorite bets, and they'll talk a ton of crap to each other. A reminder, Doug and Brandon are professional comedians you might know from the Joe Rogan podcast, the Howard Stern Show, and Comedy Central. Subscribe where you do get your podcasts. Anyway, time to start off with the recap of what happened for the last episode. Actually, the last 2 episodes, because we had the first round in Beijing and the first round in Tokyo. Starting off with the bad news, did lose a lock on one of the 2 shows, as we lost Tiafoe moneyline at -135 as he lost in straight sets to Nakashima. Was up a break early, then kind of fell apart. Tiafoe did classic Tiafoe's things where he looked mentally, I'd say, checked out, and he didn't really care, and he eventually kind of self-destructed, which is classic Tiafoe behavior. So Tiafoe back on the banned list, gave him a shot there, but there's a reason why I don't really like him that much when it comes to betting on him, and it's because I don't trust his mental state. And once again, he half no-showed the match and ended up losing in straight sets. So picked up a loss there for the lock, but that was the only loss that we had. Getting into the actual dog play for the Tokyo first round episode, did have Thompson moneyline at a +132 against Ruud. Did win in straight sets, as the first set was a breaker, ended up winning that one. Then he coasted to a nice easy win in the second set. Ruud continues to be in free fall mode, and we got a nice plus money price, so nice win there for Thompson, as he got the job done in pretty convincing fashion to cash us that dog play. For the Beijing episode, we swept. So nice overall episode there. For the lock, we had the under 21.5 games in the Alcaraz and Pericard match. Even mentioned the possibility of a 6-4, 6-4 scoreline. That's what we got, as Alcaraz won 6-4, 6-4. So nice win there. Bit of a sweat there to end the first set, as you saw Pericard have 3 break points in the 4-5 game. So pretty important game there, because it would have saved us a couple of games, and eventually Alcaraz ended up holding, got himself out of the love 40 jam, as he ended up holding to win the set. Then he eventually broke again early in the second set, as he coasted to a nice win, 6-4, 6-4. So nice win there for the lock. For the dog, though, nice win. Looked bad early. We had Carreño Busta +1.5 sets against Rublev at +115. Lost the first set 6-0. So definitely looked like he was going to get killed. But then he settled in. The forehand took over, and he got the job done in the second set. Then he lost in the third set, so it followed the exact head-to-head script we've seen for their entire careers, which is Rublev beating Busta in deciding sets. And we saw that again in the first round here. So overall, nice win there for the dog. So once again, lost the lock for the Tokyo episode, won the dog for the Tokyo episode, won the lock for Beijing, and the dog for Beijing. So 3-1 in the first round for our actual picks. Nice overall, I'd say, collection of first round choices, and hopefully we keep that rolling for the quarters here in Tokyo and the remainder of these 2 events. Now, getting into the actual recap of Saturday's matches, decided not to recap everything Just going to go through the matches that took place today. Starting off with the matches in Beijing. You saw Leheshka come back from a set down against Agut. Nice win there for him. Sinner keeps dropping sets. Dropped the first set again for the second straight match, but then dominated the final two sets against Fulin as he won 6-2, 6-3 in the final two. And Medvedev ended up beating Mannarino. Had a marathon first set, which he won via breaker. And then Mannarino kind of ran out of gas as Medvedev beat him 6-2 in the second set. Besides that, though, for Tokyo, you had Mickelson, who beat O'Connell in straight sets. Really never in doubt for him. Nishikori got the job done, beating Thompson in straight sets. Nice win there. Had a marathon win against Cilic in the first round, and then was able to coast past Thompson. I thought that Nishikori was live. I didn't think that he'd coast that easily, only dropping 5 games. But nice win there for Nishikori. And you saw Rune get the job done against Nishioka, as Nishioka ended up beating Felix in the first round, then proceeded to injure himself while celebrating as he cramped as he fell to the court, and then he came back and he ended up losing to Rune. I do want to point out, though, that Nishikori, I'd say, run so far. I mean, I'm rooting for him. I'm just going to throw it out there. And Nishioka, of course, ended up having the run short-lived, but Nishikori is the only Japanese guy left, as we also saw. I'm trying to think of who else lost. Moshizuki, I believe, lost earlier in the event. So only one Japanese guy left, and you are looking at Nishikori, who is going to try to bring the trophy back to Japan, but we'll see what happens, as he is once again in good form, but he has a tough matchup against Rune coming up in the quarterfinals. Anyway, thinking of anything else that's worth talking about, I don't have much that I think is worth talking about. Trying to think of any headlines or anything that was going on. I don't think I have anything for headlines, so wanted to briefly mention what happened in the matches on Saturday. Not going to dive too far back. We saw a couple head case performances, though, from Felix and from Tsitsipas. Tsitsipas was just funny, based on how Tsitsipas has played for the last couple months and how, I'd say, hateable he actually is based on how he conducts himself on the court. So definitely funny seeing him implode against Mickelson in the first round. Felix's, though, was embarrassing. You had 2 match points. We saw that you had Nishioka battling an elbow issue, and you saw Felix blow the 2 match points, and then eventually had a couple of really bad unforced errors in the tiebreak to lose the final set. Awful loss for Felix. For the sake of, I'd say, the immediate future, we're going to avoid outrights on Felix and Tsitsipas. It's not worth it. They're just too much of a headache. Not going to bother. But if you faded the head cases, you did pretty well. The one exception being Rune, and we'll see how he does in the rest of the event. Anyway, before we get into the actual matches here for Tokyo on the Sunday card, do want to remind you once again that we are brought to you by Nordic Fantasy, because they have a lot of great items on their menu, and they also have first touchdown projections. So if you had Rico Dowdle, for example, in the Thursday night game, you did pretty well for yourself. Points, though, that there are a ton of ways to win with the NFL, with college football, MLB, MMA, and more, including WNBA and tennis, of course. They're all jam-packed with profit boosts and no sweat entries, and you can now use specials and boost on our flex entries. For my entry, I'll go to the NFL, actually. Give me Anthony Richardson higher, half an interception against the Steelers. Has a bunch of picks this season, at least 1 pick in every game this season. Extremely inaccurate with the football, and the Steelers' defense we know is very, very good. I think Richardson makes it at least 1 really bad throw that gets picked off in this game. So give me that, the higher half a pick on Anthony Richardson as my choice for the underdog entry. Points to sign up with the promo code SGPN. To claim your special pick and your first-time deposit offer up to $1,000 bonus cash on fantasy promo code SGPN. Welcome back, everyone, to the Tennis Gambling Podcast. Just finished recapping what happened in the last episode and the Saturday matches. Now it's time to move on to the Sunday matches in Tokyo. So starting off with the first match on the card. First match here, you have a pretty interesting one based on the odds, which suggests it should be a war. Matchup between Makic and Mickelson. Now, for this one, for the odds, you have Mickelson at around -115. Makic is around -105. And the spread here, -0.5 for Mickelson, +0.5 for Makic. For the over-under, between 23.5 and 24.5. For the set wagering, the over 2.5 sets. I see even money on a book. You can probably find +120, though, if you shop around. I see under at -130. And for the actual set spread here, Mickelson in straight sets is +240. You have Makic to win in straight sets at +260. So for this one, really a tale of 2 different paths, because we have seen Mickelson look very comfortable so far in the event, as he was able to beat the likes of, for example, just going through him. We saw him beat O'Connell in straight sets on Saturday, and we saw him beat Tsitsipas in 3 sets, but he kind of coasted in the last 2, and he ended up beating Chorich and Uchiyama in straight sets in qualifying. So 3 of the 4 wins here have been in straight sets. Makic, though, has been involved in a couple of difficult spots because he ended up beating Paul in 3, and he beat Papiron in 3. But he was down a break. He was down a set in a break against Paul, and he was down a break in the 3rd set. So kind of the Houdini act by Makic as he got the job done eventually against Paul in a tiebreak. But you saw the Papiron match not be easy either. So we have seen a couple marathons for Makic and a couple of somewhat stress-free wins for Mickelson. I know he dropped the set to Tsitsipas, but then eventually he completely fell apart. And I believe Tsitsipas claimed he wasn't feeling well. Whether that's true or not, who knows? Point is, though, not much stress, at least by comparison to Makic, who had a couple of marathon third setters. So I think you're looking at, I think you're just expecting a pretty interesting matchup where, on principle, I got to go with the under 2.5 sets. You can't give me an under 2.5 sets below minus 140 and expect me not to take it. I don't think people realize how hard it is to actually get to 3 sets. You need one guy to dominate the first set, then to kind of fall apart in the second set, and then to regain his form, I guess, in the third. It's asking a lot. Now, I love the market because I do think you can find some great prices on there, especially with some guys who get off the slow starts and maybe pace themselves over the course of the matches. But minus 130 on straight sets, I think, is a great price. On principle, I kind of have to consider playing that. Now, for the actual head-to-head, Makic did win the only meeting. They faced off earlier this year on clay. It was in Geneva, so not really worth talking about, but I got to mention it, as Makic did win in straight sets with a tiebreak in the second set. Now, I do think Mickelson has looked really comfortable here on the courts. Makic has been pretty up and down, so I do think Makic can be, I'd say, potentially vulnerable to Mickelson, who I think has been playing some great tennis, and I think that Mickelson, even though he's not the best server, can get a lot of returns in play. And if he can neutralize Makic's serve, then I think Mickelson can definitely outlast Makic in these long rallies. But for me, I'm going to go with Mickelson in this one at minus 115. Mostly comparing time on court, I just think Makic has had a couple of marathons that have been probably exhausting to him physically. And even though he survived, I do question if Mickelson, who has the ability to keep a lot of balls in play, limit the mistakes, will eventually wear down Makic physically over the course of these 2 or 3 sets. I feel that way. I'm going to go with Mickelson to get the job done here at minus 115. But once again, on principle, I am going to go with the under 2.5 sets at minus 130. That's a very cheap price. That's too cheap, and I think there's some value on it. So give me Mickelson to get the job done in what I think could be a marathon, but I trust his stamina more than Makic's based on what we've seen for the last couple rounds. So give me Mickelson in that one. Moving on to the next matchup, you have Draper against Humbert, which should be the match of the round. Looking at the matchup here, you have Draper and Humbert have been really good individually so far in the event. We saw Humbert destroy Nakashima in the last match, and we ended up seeing Humbert win comfortably in the first round against, just pulling it up right now, against Mochizuki. So he ended up winning those 2 matches while dropping less than 6 games in both matches. As for Draper, 1 straight sets against Hurkacz and 1 straight sets against Bellucci. So Hurkacz did drop out of the next event, so he's battling a bit of a knee issue. So he was facing a compromised opponent, but I thought Draper looked very good. And we saw him make the US Open semis. So I know that he's definitely in great form, and that should result in a fun matchup. Now, you're looking at the overall money line. Draper's about minus 145. Humbert's a plus 125. For the game spread, minus 1.5 for Draper, plus 1.5 for Humbert. For the over-under, you have around 24.5 games or 25. For set spread, you have Draper in straight sets at plus 180. You have Humbert to win in straight sets at plus 350. Now, both guys are lefties, which is kind of rare to see a lefty versus lefty matchup. Both guys, though, stylistically, you could argue are kind of similar, as both guys are not the best servers, but they are very, very good at rallying, and they're very, very good at returning serve. So I expect some breaks in this matchup, and I think with that being the case, I have to consider the under in this matchup. Kind of similar to what I mentioned in the previous match that I broke down between Mickelson and Makic. If you're going to give me 26 games at minus 140, I see value on that when both guys are not tiebreaker machines. In fact, you're looking at Humbert, who's had 0 tiebreaks in 6 straight matches. So you're basically giving me the match to end in straight sets once again at about minus 140. I like that price quite a bit. I think both guys might kill each other, but I think the value itself is present, expecting one of these guys to keep winning in straight sets. So I am going to go with that as my main option. I would probably lean to Draper if I had to, but Humbert's been really, really good So I'm going to stay away from the side. Instead, I am going to go with the under. I think all the values on the under. I'll dare these guys to go to 3 sets. It's the only way you lose. If you want to go for 25 at minus 110 instead, I like that too. But expecting the match to go to 3 sets at around even money, I think is, once again, a pretty absurd price, especially if you want to go for the 25 games at minus 110. I'll go with that as the under for my main option for that match. I expect a close matchup, but once again, no value at all on the over. Give me the under, expecting one guy to break through. Both guys stylistically are similar, so if one guy plays better than the other, it will be tough for the guy behind to come back. So with that being the case, give me the under as my main thought in that matchup based on the pricing. Moving on to the next matchup, you have Rune against Nishikori. For this one, Rune is about minus 155. You have Nishikori at around plus 135. For the game spread, minus 2.5 for Rune. Plus 2.5 for Nishikori. For the over-under, you have 22 games or 21.5. Set spread, you have Rune in straight sets at plus 150. You have Nishikori to win a set at minus 180. Nishikori to win in straight sets is plus 300. The over 2.5 sets is plus 145. Now, this is an example of where the over 2.5 sets bet has some value. I think the cutoff for me is plus 125. I mentioned this on the show before. But if you're going to give me under 2.5 sets at a pretty affordable price, it's tough for me to avoid it. Now, for this case, I do think you can expect a marathon, and I think that both guys will look sharp in a lot of baseline battles. So I am going to go with what I think should be a close matchup. Rune, though, has been good. Don't get me wrong. Did go to 3 sets against Tabilo, but then he ended up dominating against Nishioka in the last matchup. Said before that Nishioka got injured in the matchup against Felix, so he was battling some cramps. Think he was able to get through it. Didn't look that injured in the match against Rune, but you have to at least ask yourself if he was 100% healthy. Rune, though, has been good, so I'm not going to dismiss it, but Nishikori ended up beating Cilic, who just won a title, and you saw him beat Thompson in straight sets. I'm going to go Nishikori plus the 2.5 games here, and I am going to go with the over 2.5 sets. It's correlated, but I think that Nishikori can keep it interesting. Home country angle, and he has looked very sharp in these events, or I should say in this event. So give me what I think should be Rune probably eventually winning, but I think you're looking at him being a head case who might end up blinking if Nishikori keeps enough balls in play, and if he puts the pressure on Rune, Rune might fold for about 10-15 minutes. So I am going to go with the dog here, plus the games and the over 2.5 sets as my main thought for that matchup. Now, moving on to the last match for the Tokyo quarterfinals, we'll get a matchup between Shelton and Fees. For this one, Shelton had a competitive first-round match as he was able to get by against Opelka in 3 sets. Surprisingly, no tie breaks, but he was able to win at 6-4 in the final. Then he beat Navone in straight sets. Not a shock there. Navone is not a good hardcourt player, can't serve, and Shelton ended up beating him 6-4, 6-3. As for Fees, ended up having a weird path, beat Fritz in a shocking upset, in my opinion, as he ended up winning in 3. Then he lost the first set to Berrettini. Berrettini hurt his stomach or his abdomen, and you saw him retire despite being up a set. So Fees was pretty fortunate to beat an injured guy because he was down a set. So keep that in mind. But Fees has been kind of a mess recently. Saw him lose early in the U.S. Open to Diallo, then lost 2 matches in the Davis Cup, lost to Kokkinakis and to Bautista Agut, then beat Leheshka, then beat Fritz, and then beat Berrettini. So he randomly flipped a switch, which we see a couple of times a year from Fees. Point is, though, Shelton has been good. We saw him in the Laver Cup look pretty sharp, beating Medvedev, for example. For this one, I think I am going to go with the favorite. I'm going to go with Shelton at around minus 140. I think it's a good price. I think that Shelton, looking at the odds here, minus 140 for him, plus 120 for Fees. Game spread, you have minus 1 for Shelton, plus 1 for Fees. For the over 2.5 sets, plus 125. Straight set for Shelton's plus 180, and you have Fees and straight sets at plus 300. The over-under in games, by the way, is around 23.5. Might be a marathon, but I think that Shelton is going to win. He's defending champion, and Fees, yes, he beat Fritz, good win there. I just have a hard time trusting him because of his inconsistency. I think that Fees can look very sharp in one match and then look awful the day after. Shelton, whether you like him or not, is pretty consistent, and I think that he's going to be giving a solid effort once again, trying to defend his home, I should say defend his trophy here in Tokyo. So I am going to go with Shelton to get the job done. I think that it should be a close matchup, should be fun, but Fees winning 1.5 matches when he was down a set to Berrettini doesn't exactly wow me. I think that Shelton can get the job done. Might go 3, so maybe the over, but I think that Shelton has, of course, the game that translates well to the courts here, as we saw him beat Shelton last year, for example. So I am going to go. We saw him beat Sinner, last year. So I think that, once again, his game translates well here. Give me a pretty affordable price here at minus 140. If you want to go for the games instead, I don't hate it, but you might get 3 sets. So I'm going to go with Shelton instead on the money line at around minus 140. That's going to wrap it up for the 4 matches for the quarters here in Tokyo on Sunday. Now it's time for the lock and dog picks. But for that, I want to remind you once again that we are brought to you by BetUS, because BetUS is our brand new sponsor. Been around for more than 30 years. You can easily deposit using crypto and get lightning fast payouts. They also are a great way to show support of SGPN, because you can get yourself access to another great book by signing up at BetUS with our link to sign up and get a 125% deposit bonus on your first 3 deposits. Great deal there. Go to sportscampodcast.com/BetUS, sportscampodcast.com/BetUS with the promo code SGPN, and they know we sent you. BetUS, America's favorite sportsbook. We're also brought to you by Rhythm. Rhythm is SGPN's proud partner, and they are helping bettors of all levels build custom predictive models. In seconds, get predictions on money line, spread totals, and props. And a reminder that you can build your own model. You can copy one from the leaderboard. They have a leaderboard showing you the best performing models right now, or you can press build a model from Rhythm, and Rhythm will give you immediate predictions on every game and player props. And they also have a bunch of stats, research, and trend analysis to help give you even more betting insight. A reminder, you can sign up with a free trial, so you can definitely try out the platform for free. 7 days, go to sportscampodcast.com/rhythm, sportscampodcast.com/RATHMM to get your 7-day free trial. Welcome back, everyone, to the Tennis Gambling Podcast. Just finished going through the quarterfinals for Tokyo. Now it's time for the lock and dog picks. For the lock, I am going to go back to the last match, actually, and I am going to back to the defending champion. I am going to go with Shelton on the money line at minus 140. Couple reasons why. First reason, he's the defending champion, so his skill set translates well to the courts here in Tokyo. We have seen Shelton get off to some slow starts in the past in events, and then he's kind of picked it up as he's gone on, and I feel like that's kind of what happened here in this event, as we saw him drop the first set to Opelka. Since then, he's been dominant. He's dropped less than 5 games in each of the last 4 sets. He's playing good tennis, and I do think that he is in a good spot to make another Tokyo semifinal. Now, Fees, once again, did end up beating Fritz, which was kind of shocking in the first round, but he was fortunate because he was down a set to Berrettini, and Berrettini quit. So Fees got here by technicality, basically, by retirement. But he lost the first set to a half-injured player, and then you saw Berrettini's injury become so unbearable that he had to quit. So Fees is pretty lucky to be here. I think if Berrettini was healthy, he would have beaten Fees. So with that being the case, I think that Fees is a pretty good fade candidate. I think Berrettini is a better server than Shelton, but similar stylistically, and Shelton's healthy. I think it might be a close matchup, but I think it's a good price, especially when you consider the fact that they faced off last year on hard court. They only head-to-head meeting, and Shelton did win in straight sets. So Shelton has the head-to-head advantage. He's defending champion, and Fees is lucky to be here based on injury for his opponent. So that being the case, give me Shelton to get the job done here on the money line at minus 140 as my lock. For my dog, I am going to go with a prop. It's going to be back in the Humbert and Draper match. Found a phenomenal price that I love. I'm going to go with Humbert and Draper under half a tiebreak at plus 132. This was on Bet Rivers. Now, a couple reasons why I'm going to go with the under half a tiebreak in this matchup. First reason, shopping around, no tiebreaker in the match is even money on DraftKings. So you're saving 32 cents by shopping around, which I'll gladly do over time. Now, both guys I said before are good servers, but they are really good at returning. So I expect some breaks in this match. And I think with the amount of straight set wins we've seen from both guys recently, that is definitely a value play that I think is worth something. But you're looking at Humbert's last couple matches, no breakers. He's had 0 tie breaks in each of the last 6 matches. Draper's had 0 tie breaks in every match here in Tokyo. So both guys are returning very well, but I think you're looking at a spot where you're getting a pretty good value play, getting an extra 32 cents when you shop around from Bet Rivers to DraftKings. So with that being the case, I like the value. I think both guys will break at least once per set probably. And you're looking at what should be a potential, I'd say, lopsided set fest, where maybe you get both guys winning sets 6-3, 6-2. But I think you're looking at a pretty good value play, expecting 2 good returners, 2 very good returners to do what they do best, which is breaking the other person's serve. If you get 1 break apiece and you get a breaker, it's unfortunate. But do I expect both guys to hold 12 times in a row combined? I do not. I see at least 1 break within once again each set. So with that being the case, I find value. At least I think there's value on this prop, so I'm going to go with it as my dog. So once again, my plays for the show, the lock's going to be on Shelton on the money line at minus 140. Dog's going to be on Humbert and Draper under half a tiebreak at plus 132. A reminder, we're back once again for the Beijing quarterfinals tomorrow and the Tokyo semis. So we're going to do the Beijing quarterfinals first, then we'll do the Tokyo episode later, but 2 episodes for Sunday. Until next time, though, find me on Twitter at Reichel Radio, find me on the NBA show, WNBA show, and a reminder, you can find me on a bunch of the podcasts of the network. But until next time, MLB show as well. Until next time, good luck to all of you and all of your bets. Bye, everyone.